shaking these types of relationships is really challenging because there's something about it that is also rewarding, but then it's also really exhausting and depleting. So our brain is actually hardwired to be addicted to that. It really is challenging. So give yourself grace. And then the second part is really get clear on what that pattern is specifically.
Put up your mask, let down your guard, and let's talk about the real. This is the Bring Your Own Mask podcast. All right, everyone. I am so excited to bring you today's guest. Gabby Valdes is a dating coach for singles looking for love who struggle to find love, essentially, because they're really stuck dating people who either ghost them, pull away, or end things suddenly. I mean, I've been there, so I totally get it. And what I love about Gabby is that she really focuses on helping people find the one, right? Finding someone to really enjoy life with. So Gabby Valdes, thank you so much for being here with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this.
Amazing. Okay, so Gabby, I want to ask you this question right off the bat, which is, what is a deal breaker for you when it comes to someone you're dating?
Okay, I'm laughing because this is the question I had to ask myself all the time. And I will say it's a process. You refine it. When I think about my biggest deal breaker, it's going to sound really simplistic, but it's really not. So like my number one deal breaker is if this person is unkind. And what I mean by that is like I was in situationships where I was constantly triggered or we would get into fights all the time. I was always disappointed and chronically disappointed. And then when I started a healthy relationship, I was like, oh, I don't have to like struggle or suffer and go through that. I can actually like grow and get to know someone and be connected and inspired by them. And that's really challenging too. Well, we can get into that a little bit later, but it seems like a no-brainer, but a lot of singles have a skewed definition of kindness is what I'm trying to say.
Well, if you don't mind, let's elaborate on unkindness, because here's the thing, right? Like I'm about to get married in November. My fiance and I definitely have our moments where we also argue like every other couple. So can you kind of elaborate what you mean by unkind?
Exactly. So I will say, like, yes, it's completely normal for couples to fight. Like that is healthy. The thing where it gets dicey is where I've noticed singles where they have been struggling with either dating or in a partnership. And they use like, oh, well, no one's perfect as in a way to justify some chronic disappointment. So that's kind of where it crosses the line. If we like are repairing the ruptures in our connections, if we are putting in effort, it's two-sided. Like it's not a one-sided thing. That's how we can tell the difference. It is very nuanced though. And then also when we say kindness, it's like this person is like warm and generous and affectionate and really loving and generous as in like with their time, their energy, their money, their affection, right? Like they're really just generous in spirit.
I see. Okay, well, let's get into the nitty gritty of things. Let's put down our guard, let's put up our mask and talk about the real. What kind of mask do you have on today?
Shea Moisture. Clarifying mud mask.
Okay. All right. I like the mud mask. I had a mud mask on last week. I have this penguin sheet mask.
Penguins are my favorite animals. So you chose.
No way.
Right.
You're going to be asked questions by a penguin today, literally.
I love this so much. So I was thinking about which mask to get. And every time I put on a sheet mask, I can't keep a straight face and I laugh the whole time. So I was like, maybe I should get something else. And I'm struggling to open this.
And then the universe gives you this. Okay. So while you're working on that, Gabby, how did you become a dating coach? How did that happen?
So I struggled a lot dating for like years. So I either was in like relationships or 3-month situationships or just single. And so that was really challenging, but also like there were definitely times where I was like, oh, this is going really well. I feel like I found the one. And then like a couple months later, it just never worked out. So it was always me falling hard and fast and it never working out. And I was like, well, what's going on here? Why am I struggling to find love? And I want it so bad. And I'm willing to put in the work. I've gone to therapy. I'm learning all the things. I talk about this with my friends all the time. Like it's something that I've always wanted and it just never worked out. So I struggled for a while, and I noticed even though I was dating different people, I was still dating the same type of person. So they had the same emotional qualities. And then also we thought about very similar things. And I started to notice this pattern. I was like, oh, I'm starting to date people that really depend on substances to process their feelings. And why am I dating multiple people like that? Or I'm dating people with like anger challenges. Like they're really kind and sweet. And then like 1 second, they're like really angry or not generous or really one-sided. Like I was constantly going to their place, paying for everything, keeping the conversation going, like trying to get them to be interested, right? So lots of struggle. And then I realized something has to be happening on my end too. Like I must be chasing after non-committal types or people that don't want emotional intimacy for a certain reason. And that's when I took responsibility, I took accountability, and then I hired actually my coach, who is Ken Page. He is the author and coach and psychotherapist in like deeper dating. And he teaches singles all about like the skills of intimacy. So I was learning about intimacy and I was like, oh, I actually like deflect a lot of things or deflect compliments. Or if someone wants to drive to see me, I'm like, oh, no, it's okay. Or like, I just get really uncomfortable when someone is like really kind and affectionate. And I was like, okay, this seems to be the missing link. I am attracted to people that hurt me all the time. And I'm not attracted to people that are actually kind and interested in me. So after working with him for 6 months, I, of course, like applied these skills, put myself out there more, started actually expressing my needs, being vulnerable, being myself right off the bat. Because usually when I would date, I would just have like a mask on. Like I was like, I'm going to be everything that they want me to be in order for them to choose me.
Oh, wow.
That was really unsustainable too. So then after that, I just started being myself, started trusting my gut a lot more instead of like talking myself out of things. And then I just really just streamlined my search for love, found the love of my life in 6 months. And now I just get to spend my days coaching other singles do the same thing. And it's just been so rewarding and so fulfilling because I've seen clients that have gone from I'm been ghosted, I haven't said I love you in 10 years, to then now being in a relationship with someone special. It's deep, it's loving, it's profound, and they're committed. So it's just really like fun and challenging, but like really rewarding transformation.
I love how you were like saying that when you would go on dates, you would put on masks, and like I'm looking at us and we're like wearing a mask right now. But it's interesting because it's true though, right? Like we all wear masks, whether we're dating, whether we're not dating, whether it's just our career, whatever the case may be. But what you said was really profound, that we have to take off our mask in order for people to really see us for who we are. You talked about how you got to where you are today, which is that you struggled with dating for many years, and then now you found the one, you got the help, you got the coaching. For someone that is in your position right now where they're feeling really lost because they keep dating the same exact person and they keep attracting the same exact man or woman or whoever, what kind of advice can you give them?
Yeah, such a good question. I also like how you distinguish between different genders, because it's not just like a man thing or like a woman thing.
I caught myself.
Well, no, I hear this a lot in the dating world of just like, oh, like how to get a high quality man, or like all men do this. And it just hurts my heart because I feel like that's like scapegoating in a way. And it's like, oh no, intimacy is a scary thing for all humans. And we need to kind of address this as a whole, as opposed to like blaming men or women, because I've worked with men and women and we're all relating to many of these like challenges with intimacy. Like it's a human thing. So I'm glad you said that. So what's something that I would say? I would ask the question, what do you feel is a part of yourself that you have to hide or you feel like insecure or embarrassed about?
I see. So are you saying that basically we tend to attract the same person because we are hiding a part of ourselves that we're not looking at?
Close. So we are hiding a part of ourselves that we haven't learned how to fully love or appreciate or respect. So for example, and this is just an example, this isn't just saying like everyone that doesn't want a monogamous relationship believes this. I don't believe that at all. But for me, I really struggled with like, do I want a monogamous relationship? Do I want to be open or do I want to be casual? And that part of me believed like I wasn't respecting the intentional and committed part of myself, because I had this belief of it's silly to want something long-term, or like divorce happens, like these limiting beliefs that I had.
Yeah.
And so because I believe that, I wasn't interested in people that wanted commitment. I was kind of like in the field and kind of just like aimlessly with no direction, just kind of like, I'm going to try this and see how this works.
Yeah.
But the thing was, deep down, I knew that I wanted that. And then when I would try, like actually taking dating seriously, when I would try, I would still date people that didn't want commitment. And then I realized, is that because I'm likely still operating with that belief of, I don't really want this, I'm not worthy of it, it's not even possible. And so oftentimes we're attracted to a certain characteristic when we have not learned how to fully love that part of ourselves yet. So asking the question, what do you feel embarrassed about? Some people will say like, music taste, or I'm a really successful entrepreneur and I'm like afraid because the stories and the real life experiences that they have had, again, because we're attracting these people, are like, I only date people that are intimidated by my success.
Right.
And it's like, oh, but you're also reasonably insecure around that. How might we grow our strength and appreciation and love for that part of you so that you're no longer interested in people that don't doubt your success or are intimidated by your success?
So it's a limiting belief factor on top of the things that we may be embarrassed about or shameful about that we're essentially not looking at, essentially. Which, by the way, I just quickly noticed that you have a ring on, which I'm assuming you're engaged, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so tell me, what is different about this partner? Like, why is he different? How is he different? Walk us through this part of the relationship.
Yeah. Okay. So he is like extremely kind. Like, I was funny because we were actually having dinner yesterday and he was describing one of his friends' partners as extremely kind. And I was like, I love that you do that. And all of my clients, when they meet someone, they're like, this person is extremely kind and loving and affectionate. I can be myself around them. And I was like, I just love that. And he was like, I never described another person as deeply kind until I started dating you. So yeah, he's deeply kind. He's really generous. He's really patient. He's really loving. He also loves himself. He really loves and respects himself. He doesn't have a problem saying no to me. Like I don't have a problem saying no to him. And then we respect that. And then when he says yes to things, I trust that he's doing it because he wants to instead of obligation. So that's where like things got tricky in past relationships. I would feel like they would do things out of obligation, or I would do things out of obligation. And then that would just build resentment because of course we're doing something we don't want to do. He's really great at setting boundaries. And also we just have a lot of fun together. Like I've never laughed so hard being with him. He's just a great time. All my friends and family get along with him. That was also something that I struggled with while I was dating. It was like my parents or friends didn't like the person I was dating, or the person I was dating didn't like my friends. And so it's just a lot of like conflict around that. So everyone loves him. He's, again, very generous with his time and money and energy. He has his own hobbies. We have shared hobbies. Like we are interdependent. So like he's his own independent person. I'm my own independent person. Together we come together and we like build something much greater than we could ourselves. He's really supportive. He's non-judgmental. He's super compassionate. I like can talk about anything with him, whether it's like my emotions or stresses or the things that I'm excited about. And he's like excited with me. And then he's also like really validating. He's like, oh, I understand why that's stressful. Like really like validating.
Yeah. So it really does sound like, because in a way I get it, right? Because even though I'm not a dating expert, I'm an expert in a different form. I feel like it's kind of interconnected in a sense where we have to love ourselves first before we can attract the type of person that would love us for who we are, right? Because if we don't even know what we like or what we dislike, what we don't even like about myself, for instance, or one another, like it just doesn't work. I've met so many people that kind of go back into that same type of relationship. It's like a cycle, right? It's over and over and over again. So what kind of advice would you give someone that just got out of a relationship that, wants to find that person, but again, keeps attracting the same exact qualities, but just a different face?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this comes into like multiple parts. So the first part is like, give yourself compassion.
Yeah.
Like shaking these types of relationships is really challenging because there's something about it that is also rewarding, but then it's also really exhausting and depleting. So our brain is actually hardwired to be addicted to that. So that's number one. Like it really is challenging. So give yourself grace. And then the second part is really get clear on what that pattern is specifically. And that's going to be challenging because it's a lot of self-reflection and a lot of understanding. And also it's a very sobering experience to be like, okay, what were the things that hurt me while I was in this relationship? Was it because it was one-sided, or is because they didn't communicate with me? They weren't a texter, or I just didn't feel heard or understood in this relationship, or they prioritized their friends over our relationship. So kind of writing these things down. And then also I would invite that person to then create another list for another person they've dated, and then another person that they've dated. It could be someone they've dated, been in a relationship with, or someone they just went on like one date with.
Yeah.
And just kind of get really clear on what those like hurtful qualities were. And then you likely will notice a trend. And so when we've noticed these trends, now that becomes awareness to us of like, oh, I have a clear portrait, an example of the things that hurt me, and I will no longer be available for these people. So like, as we do this exercise and it's like, okay, I'm no longer available for people that I have to constantly keep the conversation going. They're not asking me questions. It's one-sided, right?
Yeah.
And this can be really hard, especially when we're trying to trust ourselves, because oftentimes when we're doing this exercise, our brain will be like, oh, you're asking for too much, or this is judgmental, or this isn't even possible.
Yeah.
So like, I would invite the person to really see this as, oh, I'm shifting from judgment to discerning, because we're not like trying to say like, oh, this person is bad or I'm better than them. It's like, okay, this person's also likely going through their struggles. And also I'm not going to condone this behavior. Instead, I'm going to see what specific characteristics and behaviors hurt me, use that as wisdom, and then become more discerning while I'm navigating dating.
Okay. So I love all the tips that you're giving us, right? Because that's exactly what I feel like I would give someone advice, right? Because I'm the same. I feel like money is a relationship that you build, right? Like money is something that you have to have a relationship with. Now, for people that are on the verge of wanting to hire a dating coach, someone like you to help them through their journey, here's the thing, right? Like, I feel like growing up, I never even heard of what a dating coach was. I never really sought after that. I didn't think that that was even something that I needed. When do you think is a good time for someone to, let's say, hire a dating coach like yourself?
Yeah, well, you're not alone. And honestly, I didn't know what a dating coach was until I listened to Ken Page's podcast. And I was like, oh, I just really like how he speaks about things and I want to work with him. Yeah. So I never like was on the market for a dating coach. I think the most important thing is if you find someone who is either a therapist or a coach and their work really resonates with you to the point where you're excited, but also nervous to work with them, then that might be like a good investment, right? And then I think for me, I just consumed so many books.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where I had done all the research. I had read all the Brene Brown, Esther Perel, like School of Life, just constant loop of like researching anxious and avoidant, the trap. I've read all the books, like attached and everything. And I got to the point where I was like, I have all the information and nothing's changing.
Yeah.
And then I realized like, okay, researching is different than implementation.
Yes.
So like taking action, working with someone is really vulnerable too. So like with my clients, I'm like really human with them. I'm different from a therapist. These are very different things. Therapist is like focusing on your mental health, improving your mental health. Dating coaching is like, I'm teaching you the skills to build a lasting and healthy relationship. So we're focusing on skill building. That said, I also don't have that professional wall. Of course, I'm here to coach you. I'm your guide. And also like, I do develop a relationship with my clients. So if they resonate with you, it might be something to look into. And then also just depending on like what their expertise is. Like I really teach the skills of intimacy, and courage, and vulnerability so that you can find your person.
Okay.
Looking at like, I guess the result, like what has that coach provided their past clients? Is it something that you also desire?
Right. And what it sounds like is the results that you give your clients, or what you strive for when it comes to every client that comes your way, is it was intimacy,
like vulnerability and courage. So like essentially when we're vulnerable, we learn how to become courageous. And when we're vulnerable, we're actually more intimate. So we get closer to other people. Like I practice intimacy with my friends, my girlfriends. I practice intimacy with my family. Like I practice intimacy with my partner. And that's really just expressing your needs, expressing your boundaries, like talking through the things that are important to you, setting boundaries, saying no, saying yes.
Yeah.
Because that's how we actually practice that. And that's how we learn how to trust ourselves too.
I love that. Which, speaking of which, I'm looking at your mask and it looks like it's hardening. So let's take off our mask and let's get even deeper. And I'm going to ask you some super vulnerable questions if you're okay with that.
I'm so okay. Even that first question, I was like, all right, I'm getting deep. I hope Kristen doesn't mind.
No, this is great. I'm loving this because, again, I think I told you, you're my first dating coach that I've interviewed. I normally interview different types of entrepreneurs, but this is really fascinating because now this leads me to my next question, which is, what were some of your limiting beliefs before you found, I guess, the one, right? Like, what were your limiting beliefs about yourself that kept repeating this cycle of attracting the wrong person?
That I was too much, that I was too emotional, that I was too sensitive, that I was too intense. Because when we believe that, then we keep people in our life that reinforce that belief. Because if I feel like I'm too sensitive, I'm going to date someone that's likely going to not want to hear my feelings, or is the rational type, or doesn't want to meet my needs, or talks about their needs and then doesn't meet my needs. And then I will stay because that's what I believe I deserve. Because, I'm too much. This person won't even give me the bare minimum. How is someone else going to give me what I want? So the belief of like, I am too much. And if we even go like a level deeper, it's like worthiness, right? Like, am I worthy of a long-term committed relationship? But again, it's the belief of like, I don't even want that. It's not even possible, or it's silly that I want commitment.
Yeah.
Like marriage doesn't even work out, like all these limiting beliefs that I had. It really runs rampant in how you show up with dating.
Do you feel like when people have a limiting belief, are they saying it out loud, or is it more of an internal belief?
It depends on how aware you are, right? Like you could have that negative self-talk of like, oh, it's dumb that I want this, or like, don't say that, that's silly, or you shouldn't need that. Like, don't do that, right? Like we'll have that negative self-talk.
Yeah.
Or it might just be unconscious, or it could be a blend of both. So like a way that we can monitor that is like when we hear that voice, just like notice it without judgment of like, I'm hearing this voice that's saying like, don't do that, that's silly, or that's stupid. And just kind of notice it and take stock of it throughout like the day or the week.
Right.
Because then that will become more conscious because we're just noticing it. And then from there, you can like start to shift things just by even generating awareness around it.
So I love hearing your story of your now partner. What's his name, by the way? I keep calling him your partner and not his actual name.
So it's funny because his name is Gabe and we have the same name and we're both Scorpios. And we like are both like born almost technically on the same day. So
okay, wow, that's a lot of commonalities. But I'm curious because when you met Gabe, maybe before him, I don't know when you had your personal breakthrough, but I want to talk about that, right? Because you obviously got coached by someone that was in the dating niche and it was amazing for you and you kind of got what you needed and you were empowered by the skills that you learned. So when did you have a personal breakthrough and realize, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? You know what I mean?
In the positive way, like in like, this is all making sense, this is all clicking, or like, I need to change, breakthrough.
So let's talk about both because it seemed like you had both.
Okay, so my I need to change breakthrough was when I dated my last partner.
Okay.
And that felt more like, it felt really like a soulmate. Like I remember first meeting him and I was like, wow, like he's amazing and he's exactly what I want on paper. And actually I would say that, like that was a leveled up relationship. Like it was also very intense, but like when we were dating, he was very thoughtful and kind. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm changing. Like he's really great. And then I got to a point where he changed his mind suddenly and like went from warm and affectionate till then like cold and icy and then just pretended like we never dated.
Okay.
So that was very hurtful for me. I forgive him. I don't blame him. He's actually a great dude. But like the way that I perceived it was like, how did this happen to me? Like I didn't notice any of the signs. And this breakup felt really devastating because it was him, but it was also like this mourning of the person that I thought I was going to be with. Like this ambitious coach. We were also gonna like be this power couple. Like I romanticized him. Like that was my thing too. Like I really romanticized him. And so I just had this really devastating breakup. And then it got to the point where I was like, I never want this to happen again. I need to examine why am I attracted to those qualities? because it wasn't just my ex. I was always attracted to those kinds of qualities of like, yeah, affectionate, but then like cold and then distant and then didn't want commitment or change their mind. So I was like, this is a pattern. This is something that I need to reflect on and get clear on what my beliefs are. How am I showing up with dating? Where am I hiding? Where am I giving all my power to someone else? Right. Because when we romanticize, it's like, this person is going to choose me. Like I had no choice in that. Right. Like when I like glorify someone, it's like, I want to be picked. It's up to them. And I'm not really assessing the connection at that point. I'm just like fantasizing about someone. So anyways, the breakup was really devastating. It took a long time to heal, but also there was a lot of like lessons in that. Cause that's like that light bulb moment where I was like, I need to wake up because I do want a partner. I want to enjoy life with someone. I want to create memories with them. I want to travel with them. And I don't want to have to keep investing time and energy in these 3-month situationships and for it to end, then to do it again, and then for it to end. And then like years of doing that, I was like, something needs to change because I really want to find my person now.
Right. I actually can totally relate to that because I was like that too. I would date someone for about 3 months and then something horrible would happen and we would break up. And it's funny because I didn't go to a dating coach. And for me, what was different was that I just focused on myself and understood how did I contribute to like breaking up this relationship essentially, right? Like what was it that I was not looking at within myself? So everything that you said is so relatable. And I think that people need to take responsibility for themselves, right? Like, yes, it takes two people to be in a relationship, but ultimately, if you keep attracting the same person, then the common denominator might be you, right? Like, why are you attracting the same type of person? So I love that you say that. Thank you for sharing it. And here's the thing, I would love to give people some kind of practice or ritual that you personally do, which again, I feel like I'm rambling now, but what you said made me think about kind of your current situation in terms of, do you actually do some kind of daily ritual yourself, even though you're still with a partner?
Well, I will say that these skills apply to life in general too, right? Because it's essentially if we break down the skills of intimacy, it's like, yeah, vulnerability and courage, but it's also like trusting yourself. So like knowing your limits. So like knowing who and what you're going to be available for, and also knowing who you will not be available for. Get really clear on what your limits are and know that being clear is kind. Like I can relate to this of like people pleasing, like, oh, if I say no, it's going to hurt someone's feelings. But when you do something that you don't want to do, it's actually a disservice to yourself and the other person because you're showing up drained, not yourself, and then you end up building resentment. A moment of discomfort is worth it because you're going to feel a lot more relief like after that conversation as opposed to like months and months and months or weeks of just resentment. So know your limits. Like for example, with like business, social media, like I have to also like sit down and be like, I am not available for these kinds of messages. Oh, I am available for these kinds of messages, right? It's like trying to figure out like this thing drains me when I interact with it in this way, this feels fulfilling. So it's like listening to the things that feel good and then also listening to the things that don't feel good and like trusting that, right? Like, because if we bring this back to dating, I hear this a lot of like, it hurts me that I haven't heard from them in like weeks, but is that too much, right? And it's like, if it hurts, if something feels off, like listen to that. Because when we don't listen to our gut feeling, we're like not learning how to trust ourselves. So then we get stuck in the pattern of, well, this person's got to choose me and they're the ones in choice and I have no agency. So like really learning how to trust our gut and our intuition is the most important thing. And the way to do that is getting really clear on what your limits are and saying yes to the things that bring you joy, saying no to the things that hurt you. Also know if you say no and that person receives it really well, that's likely a healthy connection. If that person says no and challenges it and like berates you and criticizes you, you're likely emotionally unsafe in that situation. So it may be wise to assess that as well.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the word no, because I literally actually just learned this 3 months ago. I was actually in Tulum and I was at a sexual intimacy workshop in Tulum. Like out of all places. It was very random, but the teacher explained how saying no is actually so sexy, number one. And it's also, you're doing yourself a really big service as well as the other person. Because imagine if you say yes to someone and you don't really mean it, right? So it's kind of like, how would I ever trust you if you don't even know your yeses and your nos? And I love that you say that, because not only does this apply to intimate relationships with anybody, it's also with business partnerships or even friendships. And if you can't even set that boundary, it's hard to even really build a truthful relationship on solid ground. So I so appreciate you mentioning that, because not a lot of people know how to say no, and nothing against them. It's really just that we're not been conditioned as a society to learn how to say no.
Could I say one thing? Because that was like so good.
Chime in.
Well, to build off of that, because what you said was so wise of like, if I don't say no, the person that I'm connecting with is not going to be able to trust me. And also, I'm not going to be able to trust myself because I'm overextending myself. I'm being generous with no limits to the point where now I'm building resentment, or I'm feeling deprived, or now I'm anxious because I'm just overspent. Mm-hmm. And so it really is important to, yes, know our limits, because that will then allow us to have like these supercharged yeses, because you're going to be present now. You're going to be excited about going on that date or doing that, business collab. And then that sets you up for success, because then you're able to actually follow through on things, which is like part of integrity, right? Because if we overextend ourselves and say yes to everything, we're not going to be able to follow through on anything. So this is why, yes, it starts with that no, because it builds trust. It builds trust within ourselves, other people, and then also sets you up for success to create a life full of integrity. So like following through on the things that you say you will do. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone that's listening to this, practice saying no. I mean, like, it may be very uncomfortable in the beginning, because trust me when I say, I have learned to say yes so often, I forgot what no's sound like, if that makes sense. But I've definitely learned to recondition myself and think of no as a very powerful word, right? Within itself. So Gabby, what are you most excited about for the rest of this year? What kind of projects are you launching or doing? Tell us about it.
Yeah, I'm really excited that people are ready to find their person. Like in the last 3 months, like clients have been eager to do the work. So I have a program called Finally Found You, and it's a 4-month program where we work intimately together. I teach you how to show up more courageously so that you can be the best version of yourself while you're dating. And so that you can actually trust yourself and navigate dating without the overwhelm, without the doubt, without second guessing everything. So then the dating process itself actually becomes easier and fun. That doesn't say that there is no heartbreak, because there certainly will be, but you get more resilient. And that's how we streamline our search for love. Like we become even more and more discerning while we're looking for love. So I'm really excited about that program, because a lot of people, like, especially like with the year that we all had with 2020, it's like people are like, I am ready to look at myself. I am ready to go after the things that I want. I have big dreams. I want to build this relationship. Let's do it. And then also I do have clients who are like, I am so scared, but I want to do this, right? Like, of course, like the things that excite us the most are often the scariest too. So I love this program. I'm so excited about it. And I've just seen tremendous results from like clients really trusting themselves now, really being able to say yes, say no, know who's good for them, and actually stick with that. I've had clients find their special someone. I've had a client that got engaged. I've had clients that are in the healthiest relationships they've ever been in. So yeah, this work really is just like so life-changing and so transformational. It's just as fulfilling as it is for me as it is, of course, my clients.
Yeah, well, that's so exciting. Everyone that's listening, I'm going to link Gabby's links below. You can check her out. She's amazing, obviously. So how can people actually keep in touch with you? Where do you hang out most often?
Hang out on Instagram. As you can tell, I'm like trying to set better boundaries with Instagram, but mostly, yes, Instagram at Gabrielle Valdes. And also I mostly pour like all of like my juicy, amazing content in a weekly newsletter. So you can go to my website, which is Gabrielle Valdes, and sign up for that.
Awesome. I'll link all the links in the show notes below. So Gabby, thanks again for showing up and speaking to me about the power of no in dating. Who would have thought that one word would change everything when it comes to the dating life, right? Or even just in general in life. So thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. And hopefully you can come back on the show.
Yeah, that was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.